All right. So it should be recording. So the final week, we will begin with just touching on some of the user forms that we looked at last week. I don't really want to get too far into it, but we kind of got cut off at the end of the last class, so just want to do a quick 5-minute overview of that. Then Jordan had a question in mind or a macro relating to populating some type of form or template for Jordan. What group was it? Was it for global benefits?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I actually took very simple because I never done it, and I was thinking actually that it's very simple, but we started actually preparing some flat files where we need to put all the data, and yeah, it seems to me so complicated. But once maybe I have a meeting next week with Jose, because he will be running, but other colleagues on the team also will be like joining just for training purpose, just to see. So yeah, it's a totally new world for me. So,
Okay.
but it's
And
interesting.
yeah, well, that's cool, and I haven't seen this either, so maybe we can all have a look at it and have some new eyes to provide any suggestions, so we can look at that for a few minutes. And then lastly, I have this macro that I've built out that does it does PowerPoint generation from an Excel file. It's pretty cool. It's one of the things that I've focused on most with macros in terms of automating Excel Excel to PowerPoint. Um, and this comes from HR Handy Tools for anyone who's seen Chessmere's automatic slide builder feature. Uh, it's awesome. It saves a ton of time. It's something that we use most and it's cool. So I'll show you kind of what that macro does, and then also how I took it a step further and have it so it can actually create multiple PowerPoints from an Excel dashboard. But we'll get there towards the end, saving a few minutes for that, and then any other Q&A about the whole class, comments, feedback, anything general like that, we can go over. So sound good to you guys?
Yep.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
So I'll begin with the user forms. So this is from last week. You can recall we had our movies and ratings. So I might have uh, I might have kind of lost you guys because I know I finished the class really quickly. So with this, we're not even going to really worry about too much within the code. Just going to look at what, like how it's working now that I polished it up a little bit. So did you guys have a chance to look at the file I sent out last week or play around with this? All right, it's okay if you didn't. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah, just a little bit.
So anyways, if you recall what we were doing last week, we'd made the user form such that you could get the pop-up box and then you could enter in the movie name and rating, and then it would jump into columns A and B, and the list would kind of grow. But we wanted to make it a little more advanced, such that if a movie had already been entered into the list, you could select that movie from a drop down and wouldn't have to re-enter the name. So that was the feature that we were going for with the advanced filter. Um, so now with just a few touch-ups to where we left off last class, it looks like it's pretty much working for me. So I'll share what we have here. So if we click on the user form, uh, you have the prompt box still, so you can enter a new movie and rate it, or you can select one from the list previously. So let's say we want to select one of these here, uh, one of these, and give it a rating and submit that. It'll pop up, so we get the just with the drop down menu, or if we want to enter a new movie, maybe Shawshank Redemption, that's one of my favorites, um, and give that a rating. We can add that as well. And then the nice thing is you can see in column N, this is where we have that growing list of unique movies, which is going to populate the drop-down list. Well, next time I create the user form, you can see we actually get that movie populating in here from the advanced filter. So I know this was a little more complicated, but the nice thing is that you guys have this demo file, so if you want to refer to that, be my guest and kind of try to play through it on your own without really going too far into it. Yeah, I think I'll skip over this, but here we have the user form, the advanced filters. You guys hopefully remember the user form template, and then if you like double click on certain aspects of the user form, we can see what the user form will do with our cancel click and submit button, as well as the we have like the list boxes and the text boxes. So yeah, some pretty cool things you can do with user forms. Was hoping we could have spent more time on it last week or gotten all the way through it, but it's more just useful to know that it's out there, and I wouldn't expect you to remember it all, but it's just something to know where it is and know how you can like find the tools to use it. So any questions about these? Any thoughts about how you?
No, I guess it will come in handy sometime.
Yeah, I was going to ask any
Future.
thoughts about how you, any ideas about how you
It looks
could
cool.
use one? Yeah, so I mean, anyways, you'll see when they come in handy. They do look pretty cool, and it's nice to make it more user friendly and interactive if you have outsiders or other people using workbooks that have these types of macros in them. So anyways, that's that for our little wrap up of the user forms. I'll close out of this week 7 demo. Oh. And all right, Jordan, so do you want to share out with us for a few minutes and we can have a look at your macro?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop presenting.
It's actually a very basic template. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So basically it's part of our like template for global benefits. I mean, it doesn't look like that, but it's like something similar. And here, for example, let's say that I want to pre-populate that template for 5 different countries. That's my idea with the same like data. So normally here, in some cases where it's like coded, we have the data, so that's why it's taken from the workday. For example, we have employees, active employees, retirees for each country, and that information, as far as I understood, we kind of prepare some flat files where we put like the data for each country, and then it's pre-populated automatically. But for the training purpose now, maybe if I would like just to, not to put numbers here on the cells, but just to pre-populate this template, let's say, in five different files, like for 5 countries. That's my idea.
So with this template, the one you have here, like I see in cell A1, it just says country. Is the idea to have this same template, but like for the Czech Republic?
Yeah,
so
exactly. Let's say
cell
for
A1.
Czech Republic, for US, yeah, let's say.
Okay, and is your end goal to get it to be like a different sheet within this Excel file, or
No, in different Excel files.
a different Excel file? So
Yeah.
okay, so that's something that sounds pretty doable. And where would the data be coming from regarding like the head count? Or I guess that's from Workday. But would you
It's
have
from Workday, yeah.
would you have
No.
another
That's
data?
what?
Sorry, go ahead.
Com29?
Actually, that was my question also. But do you know, Yodan, do you know that HR Handy tool that Chesmere has that we're all using? Because that Handy tool is really nice. Like you can separate by country or whatever you want. Like by business, they can separate as you know either the file or it's in different tab. You can do all those kind of things to using that tool.
I heard about this tool actually. It was yesterday because I started pulling up some data for our templates for the countries which I need to prepare but I still didn't have time and chance actually to play with that tool. But I heard that it's very useful. So maybe I can use that tool, right? For that purpose.
Yeah, I think it depends what kind of, I think we need to know the data. So
No, this is something very basic. I mean, the template itself, I'm not sure that it can be pre-populated with this handy tool because, yeah, it's very complex. But this is just for the purpose of the training. I just pull it up something small. Okay, but in case we don't have other data, is it possible, like out of this template of this information, to create, let's say, three files looking like the same as that one?
Yeah, it's
And if
definitely
it's simple, like
yeah, it's definitely doable. So one more question though. So you have the data for like all the countries. How would that be stored? Would that come in a spreadsheet with one row per country and then all of the corresponding attributes like head count, age, range, et cetera, everything on that like within that spreadsheet?
I don't have the data actually right now.
Right, but so like hypothetically, would all of the data for all the countries sit within one spreadsheet?
Normally, in one spreadsheet depends for some like let's say for retirees, yeah, we can have it like for each country like on one sheet.
Hmm.
But for some like different tasks, I have to prepare like different sheets for each country. For example, if we talk here, it's not included on the template, but if we talk, for example, for PTNB rates globally, I started preparing this file and I need to have like one big Excel file uh, with the Excel sheet for each country separately,
Hmm.
where I put like which data correspond to which like cell. But
Uh,
this is very complicated. I mean, I didn't want to get like to so far, with this.
yeah. No, that it makes sense though, at least at a high level, and it's definitely very doable to have your main template and then copy it for each country and populate certain aspects of the template for each country and save it to a folder on your computer. And we'll actually get to somewhere similar to that when I do my little PowerPoint example. But it's I think what you're showing is possible, and I mean we can't really get into the macro without getting like quite detailed, and it's probably a bigger project than what we could do on the fly right now. But yeah, it's definitely doable, and there's folks who can help. I'm sure Jose, when you meet with him, should be able to help out with it.
Yeah, he's been actually pre-populating our templates, for the past. I mean, nobody from the team actually did it. We just actually gathered the data, and then he was like supporting with the macros and like gathering and pre-populating the templates. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting because the template seems to be so like complex.
Yeah, right, definitely. But the good thing is, if it's complex, but you were able to approach it with a macro solution, it'll really expedite the process, because I mean, I'm sure there's many manual steps you would have to do if you were going to manually populate it, but when you automate it, it can go really quick. So, I mean, good luck with it. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts or comments for Jordan, but I mean, it sounds like something that can definitely be done, and if it requires your Excel workbook to be kind of like copied and saved to the same folder within your directory, it can definitely be done, and something that I'll show actually in just a few minutes regarding the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Great. All right. So any more questions on this, or do you want me to hop into my demo that I was going to provide over here?
Not from my side.
All right, so I'll start sharing then. All right. So this is the file that I had prepared a little bit earlier. So now we're getting into the third piece that I wanted to show, which is the PowerPoint generation loop macro. It's not the nicest name. I need to make it a little more trimmed down, but that's what I've been calling it for now. What this macro does is, let's say you have a dashboard within an Excel file, and for many of the things we do on our team, we'll have a dashboard which is connected to pivots and slicers. Is everyone familiar with pivots and slicers in Excel?
I heard about it, but never used it.
With pivot tables, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, pivot table
Yeah.
does, but not the slicer.
Slicer, not.
Yeah, I've used it all the time for
Yeah,
dashboards.
so this is pretty popular for what we use, and so this is the example I was going to share today. I have this data called Iris. It's from R. It's just free data for demoing. I think it has to do with flower species. So you have a few species of flowers, and then details about different plants, like different flower plants with length and width of petal. So I don't exactly know what this data means, but it's good for this demo. So anyways, you have your pivot tables here, and then what we have over here, this is a slicer, and what it'll do is it connects to multiple pivot tables and just lets you filter for all of them at once. So we can look at the species versicolor, and it'll filter our pivot tables, or Virginica, and it'll do it again. So this is the way we have many of our dashboards built out, and the goal for me was to take the automated slide builder tool that Chesmere had used for HR Handy Tools, and let me pause there. Have you guys heard of or used the automated slide builder?
Not me.
Automated slice? No.
No, okay, no one's used it. So this is an awesome feature from HR Handy Tools that I kind of took a step further with the idea of building a dashboard, and made it such that you can, from within your dashboard, you can slice for different values within a filter or within a slicer, and create an individual PowerPoint for each of them, which we'll get to in just a second. And then we can look into the code a little bit. The point of the automated slide builder is that you can have many ranges within an Excel file, and you can copy and paste those ranges into a PowerPoint template. So this is something that we use all the time for the dashboards that we give out that we provide to our partners. and it makes it much more automated for us, such that we can just click a button and the macro will spit out a fully built PowerPoint rather than us having to go through one by one and paste Excel ranges into the PowerPoint. So hopefully you guys will like this demo and be able to use it. But this is one of my favorite things that I do with Excel and with macros. So anyways, the point of so that's kind of the main PowerPoint generation feature, but this one goes a step further. And let's say we have these three species here, and we want to create a PowerPoint that has this chart. Well, it's not really a chart, it's just a pivot table. But we want to have this pivot table put into a PowerPoint for each of the three species. And we want it to just filter through it. So what I can do here is I can actually run this macro, and I'm not sure if you guys have seen an Excel add-in, but that's what we have in this top right-hand corner of my ribbon. This is called the Total Rewards add-in, which a few of us on the team have built. Chesmere and Jose have built macros for this as well. And then this top piece, this is the PowerPoint ASB slicer tool. So when you click this button, it essentially just runs a macro that you have sitting on your computer. So if I send you guys this Total Rewards add-in, you can just save it within your Excel and
Yes,
and use it
please.
from there.
Yeah, that would be good. That'd be cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, and maybe I can show you some of the other features up here if we have time towards the end. But I guess I can just go ahead and run the PowerPoint Automated Slide Builder Slicer tool and show you guys what it looks like. So if I click this, well, it's going to give me an error, and it's going to say you do not have a slicer selected. Please select a slicer before running the PowerPoint creation procedure. Okay, so that means that I have to begin with the slicer that I want it to loop through selected before going forward. So I'm going to select this, and I will click it again. And now it says, what is the object name of your PowerPoint template? This is another piece that you have to be aware of. So I'm going to cancel out again. I'm just going to show you guys like what needs to be put in place before actually running the macro. So here I have this PowerPoint template. It's called Object 1, and so that's how I'm going to reference it by name. It's just an embedded PowerPoint just sitting within the Excel workbook. So I'm going to do it one more time. I will say that my PowerPoint is named Object 1, and then it's going to prompt us for a name for the PowerPoints that we're creating. So I can call it Flower PowerPoint. So that's what we'll call it. And we'll see what happens is that we're going to create a few PowerPoints by this name, and then it's just going to append on the value from the slicer that is currently filtered for. So when I run it, it's going to open up an instance of PowerPoint from the embedded PowerPoint in the Excel file, and then it's going to do some things. Maybe you guys can see my screen is kind of moving around right now. It only really takes a few seconds per PowerPoint, and it's going to loop through all of the values within the slicer, and then it's going to finish up, and it looks like it has already done. So now if I go to the folder where my Excel file is sitting, so we're using the week 8 demo folder, which sits here. So now I have these 3 PowerPoints which just got built. And Jordan, like a similar thing can be done with looping through the countries. So you could maybe have it, instead of having it build a PowerPoint, like save an Excel file to a given folder and append on the country name. In this case, you can see that it depended on the name of the 3 species of flower. So if I open up one of them, here we go. I'll zoom in a little bit. So this was my PowerPoint template. You can see that it pretty much just took a snapshot of where I told it to from my Excel workbook, and it also added in the flower name. And so now we can go and actually see where this is coming from within the Excel. But the nice thing is that it really just looped through, and if you're doing this for countries or L1 managers, it can make a bunch of PowerPoints really quick. And it doesn't have to be just a 1-slide PowerPoint. It can be many slides as long as the template accounts for the number of slides that you're going to be building into it. So pretty cool, I think.
Yeah.
So any questions there? I'll pause for a second. All right, no questions. So you might be wondering like how it's telling the PowerPoint where it wants to paste these ranges. So you can see that if I slice for Setosa, then we get this, the pivot tables will update accordingly, and this should be the chart we see in that Setosa table. So the few things you have to do beforehand are you have to name the ranges within the Excel file. So I have this, this one's actually called chart, probably not the most descriptive name, but that's called chart up there. And then the title is, so anyways, then we have another named range for the title, which is, if you include, here it is. So Setosa, this is, it's currently the paste range based on how the macro works, but it's actually called title. So we can see that this is the named range right here, which will select that chunk from the workbook. And now, in terms of telling the macro where we want to put these ranges within the PowerPoint, that's where we have the ASB table down here. So this is like one more step of pre-work that you have to do in order to be able to run this macro, but it's really not too much. You just have to have pivot tables or a dashboard connected to slicers. You have to have the PowerPoint template embedded in the Excel file, and then you have to have this ASB table tab. And what this does is it tells the PowerPoint, or it tells the macro where to put the Excel ranges within the PowerPoint. So I can, so you can see that there's going to be a few rows. You can have as many rows as you want, which will just tell the PowerPoint, or it'll tell the macro how many ranges you're going to loop through each time you create a new PowerPoint. So I can write just some notes. So column A is slide number. This column B is the range. Column C is the width. Column D is the height. But if you leave the height as NA, it'll just maintain the aspect ratio of the chart. So I typically will only touch column C or D, not both. Column E does the distance from the left, and column F does the distance from the top. So this will tell the range where to go within the PowerPoint. So if I were to change one of these, like we could make the title a lot smaller. I could make it go down to 200, and if I wanted to center it, could do something like that. And then if we wanted to try to run this again, let's see. So now if I try to run this again, call it flower power 2, and then it'll just loop through again, but this time the title should be smaller and centered, we hope.
Hey, surprise, surprise.
Oh,
Can you
hey.
guys hear me? Can you hear me okay? I can hear there's a little bit of
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, just wanted to stop by real quick and say I know this is the last session, so thanks a lot, Zach, for running this. And I noticed Annibal's been already using VBA and will be using it heavily next week, actually. So this is very helpful. So thank you again. You guys are closing with this last session today, right? The entire set of classes.
Yeah, this is going to be the final one, so I'm just sharing some of the automated slide builder tool and then going to probably wrap it up with final questions or anything like that. But yeah, we're getting to the end.
Perfect. So did anyone have any specific real life questions, some things you wanted to look into, or are you covering just this slides builder feature?
So Jordan had a question with the global benefits in terms of like populating the template. It wasn't like we didn't really get into much detail in terms of going through and trying to build a macro, but just kind of like talking the theory about what can be done in terms of building files from a template.
Okay. Well, again, Zach, thanks a lot for running this. When this session is recorded, please make it available. By the way, we've got some first candidates for your replacement, and I want to make sure they get those videos and, up to speed with VBA before they join the team. So this is going to be a nice kind of a gate that may scare some of them away. Some of them, the right ones, might get attracted. So this is used more and more. So thanks for recording and spending the time on this. And hopefully you guys got something out of that. And now it's going to be time to show off all the skills you acquired here.
Yeah.
All right. Running away now. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Jasmir. All right. So let's see where I was with that. So yeah, that pretty much covers what this tool can do. And keep in mind, like I'm not going to actually go through the code of this. It is a bit complicated, but you guys can run this on dashboards that you have as long as you have those the 3 steps of pre-work set up, which are the PowerPoint template, the dashboard that includes slicers, and lastly the ASB tab, and we can see that when I changed it, it now changed the width of this and shrunk our title. So you really have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you tell the PowerPoint where to put things. So yeah, a lot of flexibility. I think it's an awesome tool, and this is a nice way to take it even a step further, where if you want to slice by different values, like you can loop through all of the European countries, let's say, create a PowerPoint for each one of them with a different file name and with the country name appended onto the end. So it'll always just use the value that's currently sliced for. It'll do underscore and then that value to build the PowerPoint. But yeah, it can do a lot pretty quick, so that's why I like this feature. Any questions here?
Are you gonna show us the code of this?
Yeah, so I can.
Oh, okay.
We've we have a few minutes left. This is getting more complicated. Annabelle, probably not quite as much so as the as the sales incentive design tool we were looking at yesterday.
Oh boy.
But yeah, it is definitely more complex than anything we've looked at as a class. So so since this is an Excel add-in, it actually sits in a slightly different location from what we've seen up until this point. So up until now, we've always been looking at like the VBA project and then the workbook name as a .xlsm file. And then everything we've written would be in the modules beneath here. However, when you have a add-in included, so for those who've maybe you've seen how to use an add-in within Excel, but you go to options, then add-ins, then go, and then you can select your add-ins or you can browse for a new one. But this one should be, I think it's already installed, but we're not seeing it here for some reason. But the point is that within your VBA editor, it'll show up in a pretty similar location. So this one's called Total Rewards Add-in .xlam, and then within the module, this has all of the macros that I have connected up here. So there's many of them, but the one we're concerned with right now is this PowerPoint ASB slicer. But all of those macros sit within this module 1 right here. And it's pretty similar to write these as it is for any other macro that we've done up until this point. The one thing you have to keep in mind is that when you have the sub here, you have to, within parentheses, you do control as I ribbon control. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I assume it lets you access this from the ribbon. Anyway, so this is the macro that goes through this looping. I'll kind of breeze through this. I'm not going to walk through it line by line because it would take a bit, but I can talk to it at least. So again, I note this pre-work, create the ASB table, embed the PowerPoint. I'm kind of assuming that you already have a slicer connected to a dashboard. But let's see, I'm trying to think the best way to go through this. It is a bit long. So definitely more so than what we've done up until now, but I can breeze through it. So there's it does a few checks in the beginning. So it determines if a slicer is selected. I tried to make comments here where I could. So it determines if the slicer is selected. If not, then it says you do not have a slicer selected, which is the error message that we saw before. Then it determines if if there's a tab called ASB table, and if there's not, then this is where it says, if there's no ASB table, then it's going to have an error, and this is where we see the go to, and then it'll like go to one of our error handlers. And then we get our user input boxes. So this is what we saw as the pop-ups where it says, what is the object name of your PowerPoint template? And then it tells us to enter the file name of the PowerPoint we want to create. So enter the file name for the PowerPoint you are creating. Hopefully some of this looks a bit familiar. With these input boxes, so same things that we used within our class, and once you enter those inputs, then we get to a little bit of this tricky stuff where it actually has to loop through the slicers and select the next value from within the slicer. This is a little more complicated than I was hoping it would be when I tried to build the macro in the beginning, because you need to make sure that uh, it only loops through the slicer names that are active, like that have data connected to them. So there's a few exceptions that you need to work around. Anyways, the point of this is that it will loop through the slicers and it will select the first slicer item with non-zero slicer values. So it wants to make sure that the slicer actually has something connected to it to show in the dashboard. Then, let's see, I think we got a loop here. Yeah, so this is where it actually gets good. So once we determine the first value of the slicer, then we can begin by looping through the slicers, and we actually select the first value. So in the first place, it was determining the first value, but now we can select that first value in the slicer. You see that we enter this loop, so we go for j equals 1. I see I create a temporary sheet, which yeah, so that provides the list of values to slice for. Before I get into this loop, any questions here? I know I'm really running through this, but does it kind of make sense to you guys so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to see how different was this from this ID tool.
Actually, it's too complicated for me, but I do have a question. Because I think when way beginning, Chessmere has us to do this total reward, the macro, but that was only for the converter, the employee ID to A or something. So in my template, in my regular Excel, I have total reward, but it's only with the first two converted into 8 digital. Yeah, those two. So I would like to have like a handy tool attached, because I always have to run that separately because I use that a lot. So when you send us this new macro for total reward add in, that's what I'm looking for that one. Then I will just add it to my regular, my template.
Yeah, so instead, what you should probably do is I'll send you the entire add-in, and consider this like version 2.0. We have a
Right.
few more features, so you can
Right.
just delete your
other
old
one.
add-in and then add
Okay.
this one in instead,
Yep.
and it'll have the same functionality plus what we're looking at here.
Very cool. Yep. Because I also see you Herbie list converter. Because I do that all the time. I say, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Add it in there.
So this one was actually Jose's. It comes up with a semicolon separated list of employee IDs. So yeah, that's another nice one to have here. You have HR Handy Tools, and if I click on this, it should open up the HR Handy Tools
Cool.
file from my desktop. Keep in mind, I think with the HR Handy Tools, and let me quick sidetrack right here. So you can see within the module, this is the HR Handy Tools macro, and it's located to a specific. It just opens up a file from a location on my computer. So you would have to change this to open it up from your computer.
Yeah.
But yeah, not too bad. So back to the ASB feature. Let me go back to where we were. So here's where we enter our loop, and pretty much when we loop through, the things we're going to do are we are going to choose the next slicer, so that the Excel file update, or the pivots update for the slicer we want to be looking at, and then we're going to build PowerPoint with that slicer value appended to the end of it. So I'll kind of explain as I go through. So first we do the slicing, then this is where we get into the the path. We tell the macro where we're going to want to save the new PowerPoint to on our machine. And so Jordan, this might be pertinent to your macro with the global benefits in terms of, so it looks and we find the current path, which is it's going to be the path to the folder where our Excel file sits. And then we add in the file name, which was from that input box where we entered flower power or whatever the file name is that we have. And then the population is going to be the value from the slicer that we have selected. So it'll append these three things and then save it as a .pptx file in that folder. And then, so once we have that PowerPoint saved, well, actually, I guess that the saving is done in this next step where we have save as path. It'll save the PowerPoint as that path. And then, so this is a bit of the more challenging VBA code where it actually saves the PowerPoint. So now the VBA is talking to the PowerPoint application. So it gets a little complex. As up to now, we've only looked at the macro talking to the Excel file, but now it actually talks to the PowerPoint file. And that's the nice thing about VBA. Like, you can do many things within the whole Microsoft Office suite. So you can even send emails from an Excel file because it can talk to Outlook. But in this case, we're talking to the PowerPoint. So it's going to save the PowerPoint, and then it opens up that PowerPoint. The reason is that, well, it's a bit complicated, but you don't want to be writing data into the embedded PowerPoint. You want to be writing the data into the PowerPoint that's been saved to your machine at this path location. So anyways, we do that. We open up the PowerPoint, and then we call this another macro, which I'm not going to get into right now, but this one will cycle through all of the ranges we have in the ASB tab, and it will paste each of these ranges into a given location as specified here in the PowerPoint. So I'm going to skip over that. This one gets pretty complicated. You're welcome to look through it on your own when I send you guys the add-in, but keep in mind that we have this other macro which then gets called into place that actually does the building of the PowerPoint. And then once that completes, we save the PowerPoint and close it. It's still with the same name, so it's going to have the appended like species name of the flower in the case that we've been demoing today. And then I believe the last step is we unslice. So yeah, we're going to turn off the slicers that we have, and that pretty much covers it. Yeah, and then at the end we just have our error handlers down here, which you may have seen before. So we have like if there's no shape selected, if there's the wrong slicer name, if there's no ASB table. So anyways, that's pretty much it. There is quite a bit that goes on within the macro that gets called, but we don't have to worry about that right now. So it's a pretty cool feature. Hopefully something that you guys will be able to use. And I mean, if you don't use this, you should at least check out the HR Handy tools, which I'll open up now. And Chessmere has built in this slide builder tool. So Slides Builder and Automated Slides Builder also kind of use a very similar macro to what I've just explained, but it'll only create one PowerPoint, whereas this one has the ability to loop through multiple PowerPoints. So I think that kind of brings me to the end of my example with this. I know that was probably more complex than you were hoping for, but I mean, the nice thing is that this one is pretty much built out already, and now that you understand how to use it, you can use it on dashboards whatnot, things that you have built out. But I can send out the updated version 2.0 total rewards add-in, and you guys can add this to your ribbon. It has some nice features that hopefully you'll use besides this. But I think what I've just explained is like the most complex of what's available within it. So we have like 5 minutes left or so. So I'm gonna probably break it off there, and wanted to get any feedback or questions from you guys, like about the class as a whole. We don't just have to focus on today, but any thoughts for me?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for your time,
Yeah.
and yes, this will be useful.
Yeah, Zach,
Well,
thank you very
definitely.
much.
Yeah.
You've
Thanks.
been really patient with us, and I think you have a great teaching skills. So
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I hope you guys can put it to use now. We have 3 more expert VBA folks on our team, so that's great news.
Well, I wouldn't say experts, but
yeah, it's too early for experts, but
Hey, you guys will get there. I'm sure of it. But anyways, yeah. So please let me know if you have questions that come up. I mean, even after I'm no longer on the team, I'm still happy to help provide answers or feedback if you do have questions. So definitely feel free to reach out. I'll send out the last video so you guys will have access to all of this, to all of the things we've been through, as well as all of the Excel files that I've shown as my demo files. So you should have all of the macros we've built as a class, as well as those that you've been working on as I go through it. So hopefully you have a lot of material that you can reference now, and glad that everyone liked and hopefully learned a lot from the class. But yeah, I guess that just about wraps it up.
all right.
All right. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for attending and hanging in there through this. I know we had quite a range of subjects we covered, and I mean it started out pretty slow, but we definitely ramped it up towards the end. So hopefully you feel confident and able to build some of these things on your own going forward. But yeah, thanks guys, and I guess we'll conclude it there.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
See you
Bye.
next week.
See you then.
Bye.